Warning, this video is intended for adult collectors. It contains plastic collectibles, questionable opinions, and the #1 enemy of translucent plastic. It's too late. Random review is about to begin.
Hello everyone. I talked about this figure once upon a time when it was first announced. We had a long discussion once upon a time about whether or not it was even possible to make a G1 Arcee at retail level that was actually a decent toy that was also accurate to how she looked. We also talked about what it needed to do in order to actually be a good toy and still be Arcee. Well, show accuracy is still the demand, especially when we're talking about the Studio Series line. So now that I have Studio Series Arcee in hand, I thought, let's take a look at it, see how it turned out, and is it possible that we could actually have a compelling shell former Arcee that still functions as an action figure? So, join me. We look at the vehicle mode, which is, it is very much her little sports car mode. Still very sleek, still very curvy, still very futuristic. It is everything I would expect out of a G1 Arcee. You'll excuse me as I lose track of the gun on hand. There really isn't, I will say this right now, since it demanded its attention. It jumped out and said, like, no, talk about me next. It's not your turn, gun storage. But yeah, it's about as accurate as I could expect this vehicle mode to be given the limitations. There's a couple weird things like the gaps at the top. You're not going to really avoid those, so well, you might, but that would involve even more panels to this toy. I don't think anyone really wants that. So yeah, everything here is done pretty well. Translucent plastic for the windshield, which in this case doesn't seem to be much of a problem. In fact, I think it's the only translucent element on the whole toy. Got her little antenna here in the back. Front looking really, really nice. This piece actually is her chest, so she automatically uses more of the vehicle mode for her robot than the Earthrise version of the toy. So she's got that going for her. Just a little bit of gray here on the side, just breaks it up just a little bit. This super tiny door. It's got like an actual like door handle hinge molded in. Like, or at least it's got the like appearance of a door handle, but I don't think it's like actually going to open. It's such a tiny little thing. This is the kind of car you just kind of hop into. Though you'd be a very tiny human, very tiny. All right. I'm being silly now. In the rear, we got sections molded in for the taillights. We also have her butt just kind of sticking out there. So Arcee has no bumper, but a heck of a trunk. That's all I'm gonna say on that one. The white's been painted on very nicely. The inner white here, that's molded, and then this being painted up. Yes, I know. Hang on. White molded here and then painted. The paint match is okay. In the light, you can definitely tell there is a difference. The pink overall in person does have a little bit of a pale quality, like there's a tiny bit of purple in there, but it's still very much in the Arcee realm of pink, so I'm going to give it a pass. And then, little gray wheels on the side that barely roll even when you're on a very friction-friendly surface, like a mouse pad or something. Also, like, because she's mostly, like, panels that are loosely tabbed together, it's kind of hard to get all four down at the same time. So it's a little bit weird as a car toy. But yeah, works fine. So yes, you little pistol. There's no real spot to mount it in vehicle mode as an armed weapon. You maybe get away with like keeping it in the gap there. Maybe that. Like that's not big enough. There's no like hole or gap. That doesn't work. Yeah, I don't have anywhere for this thing to go. So usually I use that gap in there as weapon storage. The handle does kind of friction in, but it definitely doesn't feel like it's supposed to work that way. I think I'm just using it as a convenience. And as you can tell in this review, it doesn't really hold in very well. But, if you absolutely need weapon storage, it's an option. Alright, let's get this thing into robot mode and we'll see exactly what we are dealing with here. Well, we know what we're dealing with, but let's see how it actually turned out. I will admit, I'm not great at transforming this figure, but we will give it a go anyway. So, why is this thing auto-zooming? Sorry about that. I don't know, camera's been acting like really wonky lately. Time for replacements. Alright, but let's figure out what we can do with this toy. So we're going to open this up and stretch her legs out like so. We can go ahead and give those a twist and flick out the feet like so. So she's already good to go. The waist can rotate around. That basically gives us like the lower half of her done. Just like that. Everything else, yeah, we get the hands untucked. From there, the torso is going to unclip from the front like that and lower itself down. And from here on out, it's pretty much what you expect. We need to start collapsing panels together. So if I can remember how this even goes, because this always gets on my nerves. So I need to get this hinge to actually move. All right, so let's open this up so we can get a little bit more motion, and then push this white section down in. That's going to let you flip this up. While these sections are rotating, that's the best time to get these things flipped up to the side where they need to go. It's one small position where you're actually going to have enough room to get them where they need to go right in here without any kind of flexing on the plastic. So keep that in mind. Fold that up and then fold everything together. I do like how all of this is very well designed, so these grooves and everything, the way this all collapses in, fits everything perfectly while still maintaining the fact that it's going to unfold into G1 Arcee's car. So that, it's actually pretty well done as far as, you know, shell forming goes. Alright, so here's an element that survived from the Studio Series figure. Collapse all these hinges down so that these rings fit around her shoulders like so. And then find the tab where the torso is going to combine in. More hinges that go down. And all collapse together like so. That should form her torso about as firmly as we're going to get. Alright, straighten out the arms like that. Let's give her a little bit of open posture so she can stand up properly. And that is going to be our Arcee in her final robot mode. And as you can tell, yeah, it's a lot of shell forming. It's a lot of shell forming, which is pretty much what you expect anytime you encounter a G1 Arcee. I will admit, there is... Now, I'm not a fan of shell forming, but I can admit when it's done well, and I do think this is done well. It's certainly done better than the Earthrise figure. It does mean that she has a much larger backpack since a part of it isn't detachable, but it's also not becoming some kind of useless, like, hoverboard that doesn't actually look like a hoverboard. It's just a big backpack. She looks like a hiker, and that's just pretty much how she's going to work if you're going to work a G1 Arcee at deluxe class. It's just how it has to be. There's no way of avoiding it unless you completely radically redesign the character. So we'll take what we got. What we got, admittedly, I don't think is that bad. Like I said, there are clever elements to how the backpack crunches together. I think it could have maybe done a little bit more with at the cost of being like, but it would be done at the cost of making the backpack thicker this way, which would mean she'd be far more back heavy. This way it distributes the weight a little bit better, so she doesn't have to have like these massive clown shoes in order to stay on her feet. So it's a weird give and take. You're never going to get a G1 Arcee that is both cartoon accurate and does not shell form. You're just not. So just live with it, and it's just accept that it's always going to be a different style of transformation than a normal Transformer. So, let's get a look at the head, and we'll see what we're dealing with. She's quite a happy take on Arcee with these bright red lips always kind of smiling at you. She's got kind of that like that friendly aunt look. You know, that friendly aunt that comes to visit once a month and always brings something for you. She's kind of got that vibe going on to her, which is not a bad thing. The paint on her face, I do think, is a little bit too pale. It blends to the white a little bit too much, so it's hard to really make it out. And it's like a third shade of pink that's going on with this figure. There is a little bit of oddness to her coloration. I can see like on her thighs, which are like completely white, and then her biceps that actually do have a slight amount of pink to them, which is a bit odd. And then a few other little odd things. The elbows are very small hinges, so do be careful. You can see the elbow on mine is it holds, but it's definitely a little bit warped. So I got to keep an eye on for the foreseeable future. So if we look at Arcee, Arcee without tipping her over, she is just, yeah, she's not bad looking overall. I like the color distribution. She's got the pinks and the whites in all the right spots. I do like that they kept her cartoon accurate with the squared off hip section instead of making her curvy, which is what they tend to do with Arcees. Even the masterpiece is visually inaccurate to the cartoon. Ha ha ha. Yeah, so I think she looks fine. I definitely think she looks better than the Earthrise version. I will tell you this, like, she actually does feel fairly solid. Considering, you know, she has very thin parts here, especially in the arms. Everything feels like it works really, really well. It feels fine in my hands. Considering this is an 8-year-old mold that has been retooled and reused yet again, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Now, to be fair, a lot of these parts are new. Like, there's a lot more to her than there used to be. But yeah, like, considering it's an older figure, it, I guess, shouldn't be surprised that an older figure with a different budget actually does present a far better Arcee than we had previously gotten. So, yeah, I think it works out. She looks fine to me. She looks fine. So, if we go into the articulation, her neck is ball jointed. Mine sits a little bit weird, so there might be a little bit of flash in that in the molding there. I might have to trim out. Shoulders are ball jointed. Now they usually try to, like, Studio Series is the line that still technically gets away with ball joints and things. So we can kind of give it a pass here. If you're used to the Generations line, you know, like, ball joints are kind of a thing of the past, except for like the really small figures. Bicep works, swivels all the way around. Elbow bend, look at the elbow bend on her, well beyond 90 degrees. Absolutely fantastic to see. Waist joint does work. Of course, the back kibble is going to get in the way, but it is there and present. You get an ab crunch, which is not something you typically get in a deluxe. That's actually really cool to see. Universal hips, those work pretty well. Got a pretty good range on those, and the hips don't really get in the way, or like the pelvis skirt, I should say. Thigh swivel works all the way around. Knees, also beyond 90 degrees. And then we get into the ankle, which not only has a tilt, but also a forward and a backward. You know, give it credit. You know, Arcee herself, this toy has a ton of articulation to her. Far more than necessary, I would say, for an Arcee. I think there is something to be said about the fact that it seems like the designers know it's a retool of an old figure, and we weren't happy with the previous Arcee. So not only have they made one that is definitely more solid and definitely visually nicer, but also has this wider range of motion than we're typically getting for deluxe figures these days, which I think does kind of make up for the shell forming a bit. Yeah, the transformation process is not the most engaging, but you're getting a really good Arcee action figure out of it, and I think that is a really good counterpoint. So, tons of articulation to her, looks pretty good. I will also say she also does have a correction to the problem that the original Generations Arcee had, in that the hands actually have a little bit of reinforcement around them. If I can get a shot in here, you can see there is an extra rim of plastic inside the hands, which is going to allow her to be. She actually is able to, like, grip it without having stress marks show up. So, good news, the hands are not going to break on you on this one. At least, not unnaturally. So that is Studio Series Arcee. she's going to carry the problems every show-accurate Arcee is inevitably going to carry. At this point, we really just need to accept that. What you're getting, though, is a far more solid outing than the previous Arcee Deluxe that we got. Better looking, far better articulation. I think if I take away anything from this, it's she really does have this great range of motion to her that really impresses me. I think the only, like, true downside I would have to anything about this figure in general is she doesn't have the accessory loadout of the previous generation's Arcee, so we're losing a little bit of that functionality that she had, and that does mean her mold has some extraneous things, like these little gaps that originally held our accessories that now are just kind of there. So there's a bit of oddity in it, but for what it does and for what it's doing to make up for the previous Arcee, I think it is definitely a worthy purchase, especially if you are, I don't know, kind of sick of Arcee getting the short end of the stick. You know, this, I think, is probably the best we're going to get for a long while.
Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.